Okay, now let's look at some other aspects of teaching Chinese pronunciation. Firstly, as regards the pinyin, let's look at some irregular pinyin that we need to help our students be clear on. If you notice, with b, p, m, f, or bo, po, mo, fo, there's no u in the spelling. Where if you say take the word duo, it's D-U-O, nuo, N-U-O, zhuo, Z-H-U-O. But with B-P-M-F, there's no U there. And the reason is that because B-P-M-F, bo-po-mo-fo is at the front of the mouth, the U is very faint. It's not bo, po, mo, fo. And so the pinyin doesn't use a U for these four consonants. Secondly, Y plus AN isn't yan, but is pronounced yen. And so we have the word, say, bian, as in pang bian, is spelled B-I-A-N, but is pronounced like as though it was B-I-E-N. Bien. Y-O-U by itself is yo, but when you put a consonant in front of it, it changes to I-U. So if you take the word six, liu, it's L-I-U, not L-I-O-U. And what you need to tell your students is that there's a variation in pronunciation. Some people say liu, maintaining the Y-O-U, yo. Some say liu, making it sound more like L-I-U. And it's a variation between different speakers. Some say liu, some say closer to liu. Another variation is W plus EI, wei, as in wei shima, but put a consonant in front and it becomes UI, as in the word dui. Dui isn't spelled D-U-E-I, it's spelled D-U-I. And some students get these two mixed up, I-U-U-I, but that's often just a temporary problem. Finally, and this can be quite a big problem with some students, W plus N, wen, wen shui, W-E-N, wen, put a consonant in front and it becomes U-N. But the problem is, U-N has different pronunciation. With most consonants in front, like K, it's kun or D, dun. But with J, Q, and X, it becomes yun, jun, shun, chun. But there's no two dots, no umlaut over the top. And so I find often students get this mixed up. Many foreigners who live in Kunming tell me they live in Kunming. And many foreigners involved in training, they're doing pei shun instead of pei shun. And you see, well, their problem is they're forgetting whether it's wen or yun because the pinyin doesn't distinguish. So these sounds, regular pinyin, you need, when you teach them, need your students to particularly note about this. Now, what I'm going to do now is to look at 7 common problems that people whose English is their mother tongue often have with learning Chinese. And so if you understand which are the 7 problems and help your students, most of the other sounds in Chinese are not a problem. Let's first look at this one, which we've already talked about, the C, which is ts sound. Because, as I said, we don't have it in English, we have people don't aspirate it, there's no air coming out. And so foreigners will say, 我去菜市场买菜, rather than 我去菜市场买菜. And so, as I said, when you teach this sound, you need the student and yourself to use the back of your hand. And if the student says 在, you need to lend the back of your hand to the student, say 在, and he says 在, and you say, I can't feel any air coming out. And so then you say the sound and borrow the back of your student's hand and say, cai. Do you feel the air there? Well, when you say the sound, you must feel the air too, cai. Now, actually, this problem goes away fairly quickly because it's not as though the student is unable to aspirate because there's de, te, ge, ke, zhi, chi, ji, chi. So students know how to blow air, to aspirate, but because this sound, cai, doesn't come in English, they've never made it before. And so you need to help them blow air and using the back of the hand and feel the air, cai, and lend it to the student is a way that's going to help them deal with this problem fairly quickly. Actually, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the whiteboard, but I'm going to put up all the problem sounds and we can look at them one by one, but I'm going to write them on the whiteboard. This one, ch. If we look at the mouth, what Westerners, foreigners, mother tongue English speakers do is that instead of saying ch of vehicle, they say ch of to eat. So for instance, when they say, how do you come to school? Oh, I come on a 自行车. Now, what's the problem, or what's the difference? Ch in the mouth, the E is here, in the center of the mouth, where ch of to eat, the tongue is right at the roof of the mouth. And so when they say qi chi, gong jiao chi, what they're doing is their tongue is too high. So how can we help them with this? Well, what we need to do is tell them to lower the tongue. But often they find this sound rather unnatural. And so what I say to students is, you must open your teeth. Ch. And then when they open their teeth, I used to say open your lips, but some of them still go ch. So now I say open your teeth. Ch. And when they open their mouth and teeth, then the tongue, hopefully, naturally, works its way down to ch, and they've got it right. But often students find this sound a bit unnatural, especially with the ch. They can say without any problem, but with the ch in front, they go ch. But what's interesting is that here the tongue is too high, it needs to come down, but actually students have problems going the other way. Sh, the tongue should be at the top, but what they do is they say sh, and the tongue is too low. I have a friend, a British friend, in Xi'an, and when he introduces me, he always introduces me as 蛇先生, and I say, I'm not Mr. Snake, I'm Mr. Stone, okay? And so what's their problem? What they're doing is they're not keeping the tongue at the top of the mouth, they're releasing it too early. So they go sh, and they're letting their tongue come down too early, where it should remain at the top. So these two, ch, their tongue is too high, it needs to be further down. Sh, their tongue needs to be at the top and stay at the top, not come down. All right, let's look at the next one, u, particularly in the word 住, of to live. 9 out of 10 foreigners, they don't 住在北京, they 住在北京. Like he's a Yotiran, he's a Jew. Now, what's their problem? Their problem is that Chinese u is a pure vowel with the back of the tongue, u, at the back of the mouth. But what they're doing is they're substituting an English glide, like the word soon, u, which starts here and glides to the back of the mouth. And so instead of saying 我住在北京, they say 我住在北京. Now, a lot of students do this, 9 out of 10. How can we help them? What I do is I say to them, say 5 in Chinese. They go, 五. I say, that's great. They have no problems with that, 五. I say, now say 住. And they go, 住. I say, no, no, no. Let's go back. Say 5 again, 五. And then they go, 五. And then they say this, and they go, 住. But when they can begin to notice, to hear the difference, you're already halfway there. And so what I say to them is, you need to feel the muscles pulling your tongue to the back of the mouth. 住, 路. And gradually, once they can feel that their muscles need to pull their tongue back, then they're on the way to getting it right. But a lot of foreigners start by substituting a glide as in soon, and you need to stop them doing that and tell them that it's a pure vowel. Now, what else have we got here? You take the word 学 to study, or 觉 to feel, 我觉得. A lot of foreigners will say 我是随身 or 我觉得 something something. Now, what's their problem? Possibly related to different aspects. Firstly, it's saying 随, 嘴. I say the end is a 也, as in the word also, 也. So I say 也, no problem. I say 学, and I need to hear that at the end. But I think also they may have problems because this is a U sound which English doesn't have. And so I say to them, as well as focusing on getting 也, 学, 觉, also make certain you get the U correct. 觉, 学, and then they have no problem. So with students who a lot say 我是随身 我学汉语 我觉得 you say, first work on the yeah, and then say, but remember this is U sound, you've got to get that right as well. 2 more. X as in she. What was that about? Let me have a look at my notes. Oh, yes. I think we've already said this about she, that the tongue tip needs to be at the back of the lower teeth, 我想一想, and not the tongue tip coming up here using an sh, 想一想. So we've already talked about that. Tongue tip for she at the back of the lower teeth, and also the most difficult sound. Remember, here the tongue tip is up here, and there needs to be the friction. So these sounds, these 7 sounds, are the most common sounds that mother tongue English speakers have problems with. So if you could help them with each of these sounds, understand where their problem is by using diagrams, using the mirror, using paper, tissue paper for the sound, or the back of your hand. The other sounds normally are not much of a problem. Okay, let's just spend a couple of minutes thinking about what's the difference, the major differences in Chinese in the north of China and the south of China. The first major difference is the R at the end, 一点儿. In the north of China, this R, called 儿化韵, is very common, where in the south of China, it's hardly ever used. So in the north of China, they say 小孩, 一点儿, where in the south of China, it only comes in, say, the words 这儿 and 那儿. That's one major difference. The second major difference between north and south is in the south, there's much fewer zero tones. So, for instance, in the south of China, they say, 你的衣服很便宜. Where in the north of China, with zero tones, 你的衣服很便宜. So the south of China has much fewer zero tones, where in the north of China, many, many words have the zero tone. One other difference, and we'll come on to this again in a minute, is the third tone in the south of China, it dips but doesn't rise, where in the north of China, it dips and rises. So, for instance, we take the word, say, 国语. In the south of China, they say 国语. We'll look at that again in a minute. Where in the north of China, they say 国语, it'll go down and it'll go up again. Okay, that's another north-south difference. Another is in the south of China, 知吃诗 often become 知吃诗. And so in the north of China, they'll say 我知道. Where in the south of China, they'll substitute a 知 and say 我知道. So in the south of China, which students learning Chinese often find very confusing, 知吃诗 disappear and emerge with 知吃诗. So 诗, for instance, 他是美国人 becomes 他是美国人. Okay? And finally, with a few speakers, yu becomes yi in the south of China. Instead of saying yu bei, they'll say yi bei. Or instead of saying jiao yu, some people will say jiao yi. Those are the major differences between the north and south of China. And it's often helpful, your student, if they've been to China before and they've already learnt some Chinese, they often wonder, well, I hear one thing said in one place and one thing said in another. This will help them understand the north-south difference. Okay, now what we're going to do now finally is to look at tones, stress, and rhythm. Let's firstly look at tones. Now, we know that there's 4 tones. La, 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 la. It's just a couple of things I want to point out. The second tone, it's important actually not to start too high. Start lower so that you can make it long enough. We'll come back to that in a minute. And also the third tone, as I said, in the north of China, it dips and then rises, where in the south of China, it just dips and doesn't rise. We'll come back to that in a minute. But as well as the 4 tones, there's also zero tones or neutral tones. And it's just worth noting with the zero tone what happens if the, say, preceding syllable is first tone, the zero tone is low. 开了桌子3个 他的. With the second tone, if the preceding syllable is second tone, the pitch is also low. 房子来了忙着谁的. Now note the exception. If the preceding syllable is third tone, the pitch becomes mid. 好啊椅子5个你的. That's the exception. With the fourth tone, if the preceding syllable is fourth tone, then the pitch actually is very low. 累了4个筷子坐着. Okay? So this is often helpful for students to understand the pitch on the zero tone. Now, I just want to move on to 2 common tone problems that the majority of students have, particularly the first one. 9 out of 10, or it seems like 99 out of 100. If it's a third tone followed by a second tone, like in the word America, instead of saying 美国, 99 out of 100 go 美国. Now, why are they doing that? I think the main reason is that when teachers teach the tones, they go la, 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 la. And so what students do is, because this is the third tone, they go mei and then follow guo, where actually a third followed by a second is like the south of China. The third tone just dips and doesn't rise. It's the second tone that's rising. So it's mei, guo. Now, as I help students, and as I say, 9 out of 10, 99 out of 100 have this, it's very difficult for them to change. Actually, it's very difficult. So as teachers, right at the beginning, when teaching third tone by second tone, you need to emphasize it's just a little dip. Mei, guo. You know, there's some students who just can't change. I remember one student, I said, it's mei, guo. And so he went, mei, guo. Everything went down except the tone. And they find it so difficult to correct it. So difficult to correct it. So as teachers, right at the beginning, third tone followed by second tone, mei, guo. And particularly if you're students in the south of China, tell them the third tone doesn't go up anyway. We'll come to that in more detail in a minute. I think it comes in a minute. Sorry, just let me find my notes. The other one is second tone followed by first tone, like in the word 11. 11. Many students make the second tone too short. They go 11, 17. And so we need to tell our students that the second tone needs to be fairly long. And that's why I say it's important that when we teach the second tone, they start low enough. You see, if they start too high and we want them to make it long, they'll go, 11. So we tell them, no, you've got to start lower. 11, so it can be long enough. Most students, too short. They go, 11, 17. And as students, as teachers, let me find my place in my notes. We need to tell them when a student says a word wrong, we need to tell them whether it was incorrect pronunciation or wrong tone. You see, the problem is Chinese people, when someone says it wrong, they know it's wrong, but often find it difficult to work out whether its pronunciation was wrong or the tone was incorrect. And so when a student says something wrong, the teacher says, you got that word wrong. But the student needs to know, was it the pronunciation that I got wrong, or was it that I got the wrong tone and I need to correct that? So do tell your students whether it was the correct, incorrect sound or the correct, incorrect tone. And along with this, we can help our students remember the tones by using colour. So for instance, all tone 1 syllables you can write on one colour card. All tone 2 syllables write on another. All tone 3 syllables on another card. And all tone 4 syllables on another. You see, this is using the right side of the brain. You see, my surname, Shi, I can't remember which tone it is, la, 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 la. But I remember the colour of the card is red, so it must be the rising tone, Shi. So use colour. They can't do it with words, but they can do it with syllables or characters. Use colour to help them remember which tone it is. Okay, now, just one more thing about this. With correcting tones, there are some students, you may have had this experience already, who just have terrible problems getting the tone right. Particularly the older language learners, the over 50s, but some other students too. they're just forever getting the wrong tone and they can't hear that they're getting it wrong. You as teacher have to decide whether or not to keep correcting or simply give up. Because the problem is, especially with older language learners or students who have problems, you keep correcting, and they lose heart. They lose confidence. And in the end, they don't want to continue to study. So although me being a perfectionist, I dislike it when foreigners talk Chinese and get the wrong tone, sometimes one simply has to say, no, give up. This person getting the tones is too much of a problem for them, and just allow them to talk. Okay, let's move on to stress. What's interesting is that whereas in, say, English, stress is mainly loudness and secondly, length, in Chinese, it's mainly length and only secondarily loudness. Let's just look at this on this chart. And so, for instance, this is the normal tone 1, but when it's stressed, it becomes higher and longer. Tone 2, normally it's this. Again, it's longer. Note tone 3, it dips lower and definitely rises. And tone 4 is longer. Let's use some examples. 我姓张，不是脏。我姓黄，不是王。Emphasizing this. 我说他不老，不是他不好。So you feel it go right down and up. And the fourth tone, 他说往后，不是往右。So go back to this chart. You can see it's like the tone on an elastic background. It becomes stretched when we emphasize the tones. Now, finally, let's think about rhythm. The rhythm, the beat of the language. This is actually one of the most difficult things for anyone learning another language to get right, mainly because the influence of our mother tongue. Let's look at this sentence. For an English speaker, we would say, Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. You see, in English, we group words together. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. But if you had a Chinese person reading this sentence, they would say, Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Now, why are they doing that? Basically, English is stress-timed, and so groups words together. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Where Chinese is syllable-timed, and almost each syllable has its own stress. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. And we can look at it like this. English, syllable time, groups words together. The boy is interested in enlarging his vocabulary. Where Chinese syllable time is more like soldiers marching, an equal emphasis. So let's go back to these sentences here. Chinese, 我姓张，不是脏. The problem is many Westerners, English speakers, they carry over their English rhythm and they go, 我姓张，不是脏. You see. Let's go to the third one. 我说他不老，不是他不好. That's Chinese syllable timed. But the problem is English stress time rhythm. 我说他不老，不是他不好. And the final one. 他说往后，不是往右. You see, what we're doing is we're carrying over our English stress time rhythm over to Chinese, which is syllable. And the problem is we lose all the beauty in our Chinese. So to teachers, I want to say, never force your student to speed up. And also, if your student says, I want to talk Chinese more quickly, so I'm going to speed up, tell them not to. Getting up speed in a language, speak it more fluently, should come without realizing it, should come imperceptibly. As soon as the teacher or the student says, speed up, then the student will lose all beauty in their language. So, I hope you found this helpful. As I say, all the files, the PowerPoints are all on this website. Okay, thanks very much.